Morning I found the note. I had been awake since 4. That happens more often now. I turned 68 in March, and my body seems to have decided that sleep past 4 in the morning is a luxury I no longer deserve. I lay there in the dark listening to the furnace kick on and off, watching the ceiling, thinking about nothing in particular, and everything at once. That is the curse of getting older alone. The quiet stops being peaceful and starts being loud. I got up, made myself a cup of tea, and stood at the kitchen window watching the snow come down over the backyard. It was mid-January. Sudbury in January is not for the faint of heart, the kind of cold that settles into your bones before you even step outside, the kind where your breath turns to fog the moment you open the door. My husband Raymond used to say the winters here built character. I used to tell him the winters here built character. I used to tell him the winters here built heating bills. He would laugh. God, he could laugh. Raymond passed 3 years ago. Heart attack, sudden, no warning. We had been married 41 years. I still reach for him sometimes in the morning, still turn to say something funny I heard on the radio, still buy 2 of things at the grocery store without thinking. Grief is strange that way. It doesn't announce itself. It just lives with you. Our son Trevor had moved back to Sudbury about 8 months after Raymond died. He said it was to be closer to me. I believed him. I wanted to believe him. He and his wife Stacy found a place on the east side of the city, about 20 minutes from my house, and for a while things felt almost normal. Trevor would come by on Sundays. Stacy would bring a casserole sometimes, or a box of those cookies from the bakery on Paris Street. It felt like we were becoming a family again, in the way that families rearrange themselves after a loss. I should have paid more attention to the rearranging. The house Raymond and I had lived in for 33 years was paid off. That was the one thing we had always been careful about, never carrying more debt than we could handle, never spending beyond what we actually had. Raymond had worked for 30 years at the Falcon Bridge smelter, retired early with a pension, and we had been careful people. The house was ours, free and clear. It was worth something now, even in this market, even in Sudbury, not a fortune, but something real, something solid. Trevor started bringing up the house about 6 months after he moved back. Not directly at first, just comments. "This place is a lot to keep up for one person, Mum." Or, "Have you thought about what you want to do long term?" I told him I was fine. I had a neighbour, Fern, who helped me with the yard in summer. I had my routines. I was managing. Then the comments started coming from Stacy too. She had a sharper way of putting things. She would sit at my kitchen table drinking the tea I made her and say things like, "It would just make so much more sense financially to downsize." Or, "There are beautiful retirement communities now, Mum. It's not what it used to be." She always called me Mum. I had never asked her to. In November, Trevor came to me with papers. He said he'd talked to a financial advisor, someone he knew, not anyone I had ever met, and that the best option for my future security was to transfer the house into a family trust. He and Stacy would be co-trustees. I would still live there. Nothing would change day to day, but the asset would be protected. From probate, he said. From taxes. He had a folder with it all printed out. I told him I needed to think about it. I called my own bank the next day. The woman I spoke to was kind and careful. She told me to speak to my own lawyer before signing anything. She said a family trust structured the way Trevor described it would effectively transfer control of the property out of my hands. She said it gently, but she said it clearly. I did not tell Trevor what she said. Things at Sunday dinners started to feel strained after that. Trevor stopped asking how I was doing and started asking whether I had made a decision. Stacy stopped bringing casseroles. The visits got shorter, the silences longer. I started to feel like a problem they were trying to solve. That was where things stood on the Tuesday morning in January when I went to the post office. It was not a dramatic errand. I had a package to send to my sister in Thunder Bay. Some things of Raymond's I thought she might want. A few photographs. A small carved duck he had bought on a trip we took to Prince Edward Island years ago. I bundled up, drove the 12 minutes to the post office on Notre Dame, found parking after 2 tries because the snowplows had narrowed everything down, and got in line. There were 4 people ahead of me. I stood there with my box, shifting it from one arm to the other, reading the notices on the bulletin board, the way you do when you're just waiting and need somewhere to look. Community events. Lost cat. Someone selling a chest freezer. The usual. The woman behind me tapped my shoulder. I turned. She was around my age, maybe a few years younger, with reading glasses pushed up onto her forehead and a heavy wool coat the color of dark moss. I had never seen her before. "I'm sorry," she said. Her voice was low, the way someone's voice gets when they don't want to be heard by the room. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to not react." I stared at her. "Your son," she said. "His name is Trevor." I said yes. My heart was already doing something strange. "I work at a legal office on Elm Street," she said. "I'm not going to tell you which one, and I'm not going to say anything more than this. You need to speak to your own lawyer before you sign anything. I mean this week, not next month." She pressed a folded piece of paper into my hand. "This is the name of a lawyer who handles situations like yours. She's good. She's been doing this for 20 years. The line moved. She stepped back. I turned forward without thinking, the way you do on autopilot, and by the time I had set my box on the counter and looked back, she was gone. I don't know how. The line was still there, but she was not in it. I stood at the post office counter for what must have been too long, because the young man behind the glass asked me twice if I was ready. I said yes. I sent the package. I walked back to my car and sat there with the heat running and the paper in my hand. It had a name on it, Vivienne Tremblay, barrister and solicitor. And a phone number, nothing else. I thought about throwing it away. I thought about what Trevor would say if he knew. I thought about Raymond, who had worked every one of those 30 years so that this house would be ours, would be mine, would be something I never had to worry about. I put the paper in my coat pocket and drove home. That night I couldn't eat. I sat at the kitchen table with the folder Trevor had brought me and read every page of it this time, slowly with a dictionary app open on my phone for the words I didn't know. The more I read, the colder I felt. There was a clause on page 4 that I had skimmed past the first time. It had to do with decision-making authority in the event that a trustee deemed the primary beneficiary, that was me, to be unable to manage personal affairs. It did not define unable. It did not set a threshold. It just left the door open. I read that clause 4 times. The next morning I called Vivienne Tremblay's office before I had even finished my tea. Her receptionist put me in for Thursday. I drove over with the folder, sat in her office on the 3rd floor of a building on Elm Street that smelled like old carpet and radiator heat, and watched a small, precise woman in her 50s read every page of what Trevor had given me. She read without speaking. When she finished, she set the folder down and looked at me over her glasses. "Mrs. Arsenault," she said, "whoever told you to come see me did you a significant favor." She explained it to me plainly. The trust document, as written, would transfer legal control of my home to Trevor and Stacy within 18 months of signing. My ability to remain in the house would be contingent on their agreement. The clause about managing personal affairs could be used to argue I lacked capacity to make decisions, and in that case I could be moved without my consent. I asked her if that was legal. She said the document was carefully written, not obviously illegal. She said the document was carefully written, not obviously illegal, but designed to be used against me. I drove home shaking, not from cold, from something else. The particular kind of fear that comes when you realize the danger was not outside your door. It was already inside it, already sitting at your kitchen table, already calling you Mum. I didn't call Trevor. I didn't know at that point what I was going to do. Vivienne had told me not to sign anything, not to indicate I had spoken to her, and to document everything going forward. She also told me to look carefully at my bank accounts. I did that the next evening. I went through 6 months of statements, something I had not done carefully since Raymond died because it hurt too much to look at things we had managed together. What I found took the breath out of me. Raymond and I had a joint account that had not been properly closed after his death. It still had signing authority attached to it in a way I did not fully understand, and Trevor's name was on it as a secondary contact from years ago when we had briefly added him in case of emergency. In the last 4 months, there had been 3 withdrawals I did not recognize. Not large amounts, $300, $250, $400. But I had not made them. I took photographs of the statements with my phone. I went back to Vivienne's office the following Monday. She listened, made notes, and then said words I had not expected. We should contact the police. I said I didn't want to do that. Trevor was my son. She said, I understand, but what's been done to these accounts may constitute fraud, and the property document, combined with these withdrawals, suggests a pattern. You need to protect yourself. I thought about Raymond, about the smelter and the years and the pension he had earned, honestly and carefully, about the house we had paid off together, about the carved duck I had just sent to my sister because I wanted someone who loved Raymond to have something of his. I said, all right. Vivienne helped me file a report with the Sudbury Police Service. It was not dramatic. We sat in a room with a constable who took notes and asked careful questions and did not seem surprised in the way I wished he had. He told me this kind of situation, elderly parent, financial documents, withdrawal irregularities, came across his desk more than people realized. More than people realized. I held on to that. It helped me feel less stupid. What came next was weeks. It was not fast. There was no single moment where everything broke open. It was forms and calls and waiting and trying to behave normally when Trevor came by on a Sunday and talked about the trust, like it was still a matter of when and not whether. I sat across from him and drank my tea and thought about how well I had always believed I knew him. He had Raymond's eyes. He had Raymond's way of tilting his head when he was listening. I had loved those things about him with a fierceness I couldn't put into words from the day he was born. I kept my face still. The constable called me in late February. The withdrawals had been traced. Trevor had access to the account through the secondary contact designation, something he had quietly leveraged using an online banking portal I hadn't known was active. It was enough to proceed. The property document was referred to a Crown attorney for review. I did not understand all of it. Vivienne sat with me on the phone and translated. Trevor was charged in early March. 2 counts of fraud under $5,000 and 1 count related to the property document. I don't remember the exact language, only that it was real, it was documented, and it was enough. He called me from the police station. It was the hardest phone call I have ever taken. He was crying, which I had not expected. Trevor had not cried in front of me since he was a boy. He said he was sorry. He said things had gotten out of hand financially, that he and Stacy had debts I didn't know about, that it had started small and grown. He did not say he hadn't meant to do it. He just said he was sorry. I listened until he was done. I told him I heard him. I did not tell him I forgave him. I wasn't there yet. I am still not there. Forgiveness is not something I can manufacture on a schedule, and I have lived long enough to stop pretending otherwise. Stacy did not call. The case moved through the system the way these things do, slowly, with adjournment and rescheduled dates and paperwork I had to review and sign and send back. Vivienne was steady through all of it. The woman from the post office, whoever she was, whatever her connection to that legal office, had handed me more than a piece of paper. She had handed me time. By April the snow was finally receding in Sudbury, that stubborn, grudging spring we get where patches of grey ice hang on in the shadows long after everything else has thawed. I was sitting on my back step one morning with my tea, looking at Raymond's garden, which I had been trying to keep up in a modest way. The perennials were starting to come back on their own. They always do. You don't have to do much for them, they just remember where they are. I thought about calling Trevor back. I thought about what I would say. I thought about the trust document and the withdrawals and the constable who had not been surprised. And I thought about the post office, the woman in the moss-coloured coat, there and then. Not there. Pressing that folded paper into my hand like she had been watching and waiting for exactly the right moment. I never found out who she was. I asked Vivienne once whether she knew who had referred me. Vivienne just smiled and said she had a number of colleagues in the legal community who looked out for people in difficult situations. She did not say more. I did not push. There are things I have learned that you accept without a full explanation. Sometimes help arrives in a form you didn't ask for and can't account for. Sometimes a stranger in a line at the post office knows something you don't, and is willing to risk the awkwardness of saying so to a woman she has never met. I kept the folded paper. It's in the drawer of my nightstand now, next to Raymond's watch and a photograph of the two of us at Lake Ramsey, the summer before he got sick. I look at it sometimes when I can't sleep. Trevor's case was resolved in June. He did not go to prison. There were conditions, community service hours, a requirement for financial counseling, a period of probation. I had no say in the sentencing, and I'm not sure what I would have said if I had. He is my son. He also did what he did. Both of those things are true at the same time, and I have stopped trying to make them fit neatly together. I have not seen him in person since March. He has sent 2 letters, handwritten, which I have read and kept. I have not written back yet. I tell myself I will when I'm ready. I don't know when that will be. The house is still mine. That is what I know for certain this morning, standing at my kitchen window, watching the light come up over the backyard. The perennials Raymond planted along the fence line, the coneflowers, the black-eyed Susans, the stubborn little rosebush he kept nursing back to life every spring. They are all still there, waiting, coming back. I made myself a cup of tea, and I stood there watching the garden wake up, and I let myself feel something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not happy, exactly. Not yet, but held, like the ground under my feet was still mine, still solid, still something I could stand on. That was enough for that morning. That was more than enough. I think about the word sign a lot these days, how small it is. 3 letters. How many people have lost everything because of it. I almost did. What I've come to understand, not from a book, not from anyone telling me, but from living through it, is that what happened to me was not just about money or a house or a legal document with a clause on page 4. It was about whether I was willing to look clearly at something I desperately did not want to see. That is the hardest thing a person can be asked to do, to look at someone you love and let yourself understand what they are actually doing to you. Raymond used to say that honesty costs you something every time. He meant it about telling other people the truth. I think now he was also describing what it costs to be honest with yourself. It costs comfort. It costs the version of the story you wanted to be true. When I sat at my kitchen table that first night and read that clause in Trevor's document, really read it, slowly, without letting myself skim past, I was paying that price. It didn't feel like strength. It felt like grief. But that is what I've come to believe about clear thinking. It is not a cold thing. It is not detached or clinical. Real clarity, the kind that actually protects you, lives right alongside the pain of what you're seeing. I was heartbroken and clear at the same time. Both were necessary. The heartbreak kept me from being reckless. The clarity kept me from being a fool. What I wish I had understood sooner is that being good, being a kind mother, being patient, being willing to assume the best, is not the same as being passive. I was so afraid of being the kind of mother who assumed the worst about her child that I let myself become the kind of mother who couldn't protect herself. Those are not the same failure, and I have had to forgive myself for confusing them. Decency is not the same as surrender. You can love someone with your whole heart and still refuse to let them take what isn't theirs. And the stranger at the post office. I still don't know her name. I don't know if I ever will. But I think about what it cost her to tap my shoulder in that line and say what she said. She didn't have to do that. She risked something, professional awkwardness at the very least, and she knew nothing about how I would react. She just saw something wrong and decided that was enough of a reason to act. That kind of courage is quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It just taps you on the shoulder and hands you something you need. I kept the note in my nightstand. Some nights when I can't sleep, I take it out and look at it. Not because I need the reminder anymore. The house is mine. The accounts are in order. Vivienne's number is still in my phone. I look at it because it reminds me that people like that exist. That the world still has people in it who will take a small risk for a stranger in a lineup. My perennials came back this spring, every one of them. The rosebush Raymond nursed back so many times, it became a kind of joke between us. It came back too, stubborn, ragged around the edges, but alive. There is something in that I can't quite name, only that some things, if the roots are still good, will find their way back no matter what winter did to them. I am still finding my way back. I think I will be for a while yet. But the ground is mine, and I am standing on it.